Good afternoon and welcome to our chat today. We're excited to bring you some information on business goal setting for 2022. We're here on behalf of the Penn State SBDC, located on the Penn State campus, but serving Lycoming, Mifflin Center, and Clinton counties. Before we begin and introduce our guests, which we'll be bringing on from Sickler Tarpey and Associates, an accounting firm, and Annie Hughes from Coaching and Consulting, I want to tell you a little bit more about the SBDCs. So if you're joining us from the state of Pennsylvania, you should know that there's 16 different SBDCs throughout the state, and there's one that covers the county that you're in. And if you're looking to start a small business or grow your small business, you can take advantage of no-cost, confidential one-on-one consulting with these centers. So if you'd like to get in touch with those centers, you can visit pasbdc.org and find the center nearest you. And specifically to our centers, we offer that no-cost consulting service, training services for small businesses, information and resources that you can take advantage to help your business start, grow, and prosper, and finally referrals to other organizations that can assist your business as well. So with that being said, I invite you to take part in this webinar today. We'll be giving some time for questions. You can type those into the comment section wherever you're joining us from. We'd be happy to address those. We're going to keep this really casual and just have a nice conversation about how to set goals for businesses in 2022. So I'm going to invite my guests on, Annie Hughes and Randy Tarpey, if you could join us, and we'll go ahead and get started in discussing this fun topic today. Welcome.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to introduce Annie Hughes. I'll tell you a little bit about who she is. Annie Hughes is the director of the Harrisburg Launchbox, powered by the Penn State, and she's the coordinator of the Invent Penn State Launchbox Network and director of educational programs at Ben Franklin Technology Partners. Annie is also a certified professional career, life, and leadership coach and founder of Hughes Consulting and Coaching. Annie has served as a coach to hundreds of professional clients and small businesses, and instructor and designer of lean startup accelerators and design thinking programs. Annie is also an experienced innovation practitioner and brand manager in consumer products and manufacturing. Prior to joining Penn State, Annie was a manager of disruptive innovation at the Hershey Company and director of sales and marketing at Ecolips, a body care company. In her role at Ben Franklin Technology Partners, Annie creates educational programs and support for growth of technology and manufacturing throughout PA. So as you can see, we are really lucky to have you here today and share some insight on how businesses can grow this year and continue to set goals for 2022. And just real quickly run through Randy's bio as well, who is another exceptional guest to our program today. Randy Tarpey is a CPA and the principal owner of Sickler Tarpey Associates. He received his bachelor degree in accounting from the Oklahoma State University. He began his career with his business partner, Harry Sickler, in November 1994 as a tax accountant who prepares individual and small business tax returns. He primarily works in central Pennsylvania, but also remotely in all 50 states for many U.S. citizens overseas. As a certified public accountant in tax preparation in his professional focus, he includes simple returns done economically and complex returns prepared properly. In addition to his tax work, Randy Tarpey has experience working with the state's many incentive programs for small businesses, as well as assisting Pennsylvania Scholarship Fund. And assisting donors and other charities with navigating the PA Educational Improvement Tax Credit Programs. So Randy resides in Altoona with his wife and Mary, and two daughters, Olivia and Abigail. And we're lucky to have Randy as well. I know that he assists a lot of our clients in the central PA region. So thank you and welcome. Randy, let's get started with you. I have some questions for you, specifically as a reflection for 2021, because I know right now business owners are in a scramble to try to figure out what to do to close out 2021 and what they can do to set themselves up for a good 2022. So do you have any reflection tips for closing that out to start fresh this year?
Yes, I'd probably just say that you want to do things early, get everything done sooner than later. Yes, there are deadlines and extensions, but the sooner that you can figure out what you did for last year, the positives and the negatives, the sooner that you can start on this year and planning and doing what you need to do for this year for your business. And many of your bankers or other people here early in the year, this is when you're going to want to touch base with them and have up-to-date records so you can you can say, hey, I need a loan to help my business, or a line of credit to help my business, or set goals like what we're doing today with you, Elizabeth. So I think filing early and working on getting your last year's information all together and done early is always a good business practice.
Thank you, Randy. And actually, Annie, I don't know if you have any advice on that, but getting things done early, I know as business owners, we tend to push the things we don't like to the side. Are there any tips from you from a coaching standpoint on setting up those habits so that you can get things done on a timely manner?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely fall into that category myself, right? We're all human. We don't want to do the things that we don't find exciting or fun, or that maybe are scary. And so, asking for help is the most, I think, durable piece of advice I can give in this area. And that's just, we'll talk probably about it a little bit later, but getting an accountability partner to help you be accountable and committed to tackling the goals that you know are important. That can help a lot. And I would also practice prioritizing your tasks. The most important ones fall to the top of the list. And from there on out, breaking it into pieces. And another good skill would be scoping. If you have a particular task you need to tackle, scoping about how long it might take or what the sub-steps are to accomplish it. Doing that first, that might help you work it into your calendar a little bit better. Or it might actually make it seem more manageable than it does just as a top line task.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. I think that's a great tip. I definitely, especially when we're talking about finishing off last year, you want to get it done quickly, figuring out exactly what you have to do and just blocking your calendar off and getting it done. Randy, so we're looking forward to 2022, and we just are kind of trying to come out of this pandemic. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do you have any idea on what we can expect as business owners, what we can do financially to prepare for 2022?
Yeah, so the only thing that I would say is that I know many of my business owners have been saying you just have to react quickly to the situation. There isn't like the same as last year or the same as you used to do. You just have to try and deal with the situation that's presented to you. We can't blame the pandemic now and sit back and wait for a government incentive program. We have to go out there and figure out how to do business in a little bit of a different new world. And people that have kind of been through a traumatic event and are going to do things a little bit different. So there's opportunities, but there's also challenges, So I would say I don't have a crystal ball, but that's what I'm seeing with my business owners is they're all saying, we just have to react quickly and plan quickly, and that's how business is done now. The sooner that you're at the opportunity, the more likely you are to get it.
I think that's a great point. And we see that a lot. Like you said, the government programs are probably pretty dried up at this point. And Annie, I'm wondering from a design thinking perspective, if we're looking for ways to react quickly and be ready, do you have any tips on how we can filter through all those ideas and figure out which ones are the good ones to pursue?
Oh, sure. And when it comes to design thinking or whether it comes to innovation and business, really starting with data from your customer or your stakeholder, whoever, identifying whoever the stakeholder is, you need them to do something that you need to influence, whether it's internal in your business or external, your customer, supplier, what have you, figuring out then what's important to them and what their values are, what they're trying to achieve, and working backwards from that. Generally speaking, that's a good place to start. And that will help you identify the strategies that will be most effective in influencing, whoever that stakeholder is. So when it comes to obviously a business, understanding your customer, consistently setting up systems for yourself to get data from existing customers and including customer types that aren't your customers yet. So, and that would be, market research. And I know the SBDC has tons of consultants who can help you, figure out exactly how to gather data from customers and market research too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Annie. I think one of the things that we talk about a lot at the SBDC is if you don't have a customer, you don't have a business. So, going back to that, go look at your customer data is a great point. Randy, bouncing back over to some financial goals. What are financial goals for a business? How do you set a financial goal for looking forward?
Okay. Yeah. So you certainly want to look at your numbers for your business. you know, and what are the numbers for your business? Well, in a small business, it's how much money do you have in the bank? You know, how do I keep that from disappearing, and how do I make that grow? Some businesses just focus on getting more customers and more customers and more customers. Well, you can do that to the point where you don't have any more money, and so money is the lifeblood of a business. You have to have more coming in than goes out, and so for a small business, the numbers are, you know, is more money coming in than going out? Historically, can I project or plan for how it's going to happen? If it's not going to happen, where am I going to go find that money to keep my business going? You know, it's not always the best businesses that survive. It's the ones that figure out a way to just hang in there until they are the best businesses. And then as far as business goals or planning, you want to look at what your customers are saying they want. You know, the ones that that have the most needs, they may be the ones that have the most opportunities for you, and see what your competitors are doing. You know, talk to them. A lot of times your competitors can be one of your best referral sources. If they're too busy in this world where there's a lack of help, you know, they may be able to send you some of their customers, and so your competitors can be your customers, you know. So I would say, you know, looking at your numbers here are something much more than just, you know, like what's in your checkbook. It can be, you know, your website statistics. It can be how many calls you're making per week. You know, there's all kinds of metrics that the SBDC can help you figure out the right one for your business as part of your business plan, and what you need to focus on to set your goals for the new year.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. I think that particularly during the pandemic, right, we saw that we didn't need to just tie our business growth to revenue generation, right? Because customers maybe weren't buying from us, but we still needed to engage with them, right? And so what are some other things besides just, is the revenue or the numbers going up as far as profit, as far as like cash coming in? Are there some other things we can be looking at besides just that to measure goal setting or to set goals?
Yeah, so one of my really smart business people, she said the goal this year is to buy closeout items, because she thinks with the supply disruption and all the products, there's going to be over ordering this year. That's her, you know, that's her goal, is to make sure that she is at every closeout sale for the products that she buys, so that she can buy those products lower, and even if she sells them at the same price, you know, she'll do really well. So I think it's just looking at opportunities in, you know, like in your environment, what's popping, what are people really interested in, you know, and it is a lot more online than it was before the pandemic, because people are still, you know, doing Zooms like we're doing today, you know. So there's definitely you know, a new way of doing business, and figuring out how that can help your business survive, grow, and thrive, you know, is one way. The other way is, you know, one thing we're selling is time. So like if you're a small business owner, there still is only so much of your time. So how are you going to use that properly? And if you're going to buy somebody else's time, it's going to be really expensive right now, because the other thing that seemed to have happened through this pandemic is the baby boom generation. A lot of the people in that generation, they retired, you know, so there's just not as many people in the workforce right now. And I'm sure you've experienced it too, that you know, that's what a lot of small businesses that have employees are saying is like, you know, like my limiting factor is I can't get employees here on Monday, so I'm going to close my restaurant on Monday, you know, or I can't get my hospital testing center open, so I'm going to close it early because I don't have enough nurses, you know. So it's definitely you know, a different world as far as the labor force, you know, post pandemic versus pre-pandemic.
That's a great point, Randy. Thank you. And actually, I'm going to toss a question over to you, Annie, because it's a good transition from what Randy was talking about. As far as business goal setting, I think as business owners, we just look like at the numbers. We want to make more money, but we can set goals for our business that can set us up for success in different ways. What are some different areas we could be looking at for as far as setting goals?
Yeah. These are great questions, and I love what Randy said about looking at the numbers. You know, the numbers tell the story of the impact to your business. So it's, it's important that you feel empowered with your financials, and to get help with that if you're uncomfortable with looking at your numbers or interpreting what your numbers are. So I just want to say that up front. But you might have top line objectives for your business to increase your revenue. Hopefully there's a profitability objective in there too, right? Because it's just like, was mentioned, just the top line can move up, but it doesn't mean that you're getting any more profitable. Or it can actually, the top line can move up while you're in trouble, financially too. So, looking at the holistic picture. But then there are supporting objectives that can drive those big objectives. There are marketing objectives that should be connected to improving the health of your business. There might be operational objectives like around efficiencies, for example. You're making sure you're utilizing your assets to the best of your ability. There might be supply chain and talent, acquisition, goals there. I know talent is a big concern for a lot of businesses lately. And for marketing in particular, since that's my, background, the way you're going to increase your revenue, it's going to be related to some kind of behavioral metrics related to your customer. It might be related to loyalty metrics. It might be related to new customers and conversions, for example. It just depends on what your type of business you have. So, what we generally recommend is identify what your big goals are for your business, the big objectives, but then trickle down, in the area of marketing and finance operations. What are kind of the sub goals that drive those big objectives? If we know if we're successful with this marketing goal, it'll help us meet that bigger business goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely think in just a moment, we could probably talk about the nuts and bolts of actually how to set a goal. But we do have a question before we jump over there. And I'm going to read this question, and I feel free, both of you, to take a stab at it. How can we determine if it's the right time to expand a small business? Given the employment shortages and pandemic variables, should we jump in and take advantage of the opportunity like acquisitions? And Randy, you kind of alluded to the shortage of baby boomers and stuff. I don't know if you want to kick us off, and then Annie, you have.
Yeah, so I would say that's a very good question, in that, if you expand, you may be in a zero-sum game. You're expanding because you want to do something new, but you may have to figure out what you're going to subtract. You're going to have to maybe raise the price on that customer that you can no longer service because you just don't have the labor for it. Or you're going to have to change your hours around so that you can make that work. There's only so many hours in the day for an owner even. So you just have to, I have to say that in this world sometimes that we're in now, you're going to have to, when you add something new, you're going to have to figure out what you're going to subtract, or what you're going to invest in to be able to get it. And the labor force out there is expensive, So you're going to have to make sure that there's something new that you're doing is going to be worthwhile, so that you're not kind of going backwards.
Great. Yeah. Annie, did you want to add to that about expanding your business and when to know is the right time?
Yeah, I 100% agree with what Randy says. Oftentimes the answer will be in your numbers too, and some of your ratios, your financial ratios. So definitely can consider looking at that. But just to kind of flesh out what Randy alluded to, you want to map out the scenarios. If you do expand, what does it mean for your business? And what Randy was saying, what are the implications in the numbers? And you probably want to also do two versions: a pessimistic version of the potential outcome and an optimistic version, right? And most likely if you do your analysis right, you might end up somewhere in between. But you want to actually take a hard look at what's the worst case that could happen, and can I tolerate that risk, right? I see people who are really enthusiastic about expanding, but oftentimes they're looking at top line revenue, and they're not looking at profitability, and they're not looking at resource allocation, kind of like Randy's pointing to. And the wheels can come off really quickly when you overextend yourself. So tread carefully when it comes to expanding, and make sure you can tolerate the risk. That's kind of the short answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a great time to transition to some of kind of those tools. And you don't have to go at this alone. There's resources such as the SBDC and other consultants that can help you walk through making those decisions. And there's also tools you can use to make those decisions. Randy, you had sent over to me before this chat the SWOT analysis. Do you want to explain what that is and how to use it?
Sure. And the SBDC can walk you through this for free as well. We use it a lot in our business with our customers. It's just a simple little tool SWOT stands for strengths and weaknesses. Those are things you look at inside your business. What am I good at? What am I not so good at? And then opportunities and threats out there in the customer world or the competitor world. What are the opportunities, as I've spoken about earlier? And then, but also, what are the threats? And how am I going to, put this all together? And the SBDC or your accountant or your banker, they can help you balance all these things together. And so, those four things all kind of interconnect and interwork, so that hopefully you can look at that when you're setting your goals for this year and come up with a cohesive plan that makes your business better when you execute on that plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we use those tools at the SBDC, and I use them in my own business. They're very useful in analysis and in finding strategic ways to move your business forward. Annie, we had talked about goal setting and using SMART goals, but if you have any other tools, what are some of your go-to tools for setting goals for your business?
Yeah, I also want to just reiterate, don't do this alone. So the biggest enemy that any person has when it comes to goal setting, managing businesses, managing high risk projects is just encountering what you don't know that you don't know. So anytime you involve a trusted partner who knows a little bit more about you, more than you about certain areas, you are helping yourself discover territories that you don't know much about, and that will help you with planning, contingency planning. Should things go differently than you expect. And in business, as we all know, things often go differently than you expect because there are a lot of factors you don't have direct control over. There's a whole market out there that you don't have control over. But to answer your question, when you're actually identifying goals, figuring out kind of the top most important objectives first, and then trickling down from there, seeing how everything connects together and getting more and more specific with the sub goals as you kind of map it out. This might be a strategic planning process, or it might be just something you do at your desk, in a less formal way. It definitely starts with looking at the current state. I think Randy mentioned looking at your numbers today. So in terms of figuring out where you want to go, you also want to see where you're at. And that will help you figure out, how quickly you can get to where you're going to go, and if you can get there, or if you're making goals that are out of reach, really. And so that relates to the SMART goal tool that you mentioned. SMART is just an acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. And that, framing your goals in a SMART framework can help you be specific, can help you pick reasonable goals, make sure that the goals are ones you actually care about, that are relevant to your bigger objectives, and that they can actually put a little fire under you to help you get them done. That's the time-bound element of it. Oftentimes is more about motivation and commitment. So definitely recommend taking a look at that framework. There are a zillion articles about SMART goals out there. I don't even know where to start in terms of recommending one. Just start with a Google search. You will find so many. I actually wrote a blog about goal setting, personal goal setting on my website recently too. So there's always that you can use as a reference. So definitely want to use that tool. And then accountability support is another big one. As humans, we're social animals. We need help. We need to help each other. Using, for your business, using a consultant like one from SBDC, SCORE, what have you. Those folks can help you be accountable to achieving your goals, to keeping at, chipping away at those goals. And personally, using a coach, using a trusted family or friend can make the difference between, just setting a goal and not doing anything with it, and setting a goal and actually attaining it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Annie. Actually, Randy, I wanted to bring you back on one in talking about tools. What about a budget? Do those work for small businesses? And if so, are they good ways to set goals for looking ahead for your business?
Sure. Yeah. So as an accountant, a budget's always a good thing, either through business or through personal. You can just get off track on, going hog wild spending, and not realize where the income's coming from, either personally or through business. So we work with businesses all the time where we're trying to help them set a budget off of what they did last year, what they're planning to do for this year. They do that through the SBDC, through their business planning. It's really just a budgetary process. Your banks will help you set a budget. So there's financial budgets with dollars, but there's also budgets like, how many times am I going to cold call this group of customers, or go back to my customer base and check on them, like, so there's other budgets you can set besides just dollar and cents budgets. And I love what Annie said about reaching out to others, just even assessing in your environment, who are the volunteers, who are the employees that are the most enthusiastic, the customers are the most enthusiastic, the professional advisors that aren't charging me, like who's the most enthusiastic volunteers, that I can go to and get some help in how to make my business grow, because they just don't grow by themselves. They grow in organic connections with others.
That's a great point, Randy. Thank you. Okay, next I'd like to address the common pitfall of setting these really lofty goals and then just not making them, burning out, being too much. So, Annie, do you have any advice on how to set goals that are actually obtainable, that you can stick to and carry through?
Yes. A lot of the folks I work with, whether they're individuals looking for career coaching or whether they're entrepreneurs, they tend to be very ambitious in nature. And if that is you, and it is me, and I think I get the sense that people on this call might also fall in that category, you are probably prone to overextending yourself and thinking you do more than you can. And so I think looking. The best predictor of the future is the past, right? So looking and seeing how much you can handle personally, looking at the past month, the past year, and using that to kind of scope how much energy you have, whether this is a business goal or whether this is a personal goal, because you are a person doing a business goal, right? So you need to make sure that you have the time and the energy and the focus you need to address whatever business goal you have. So take a realistic look at the past and apply that framework then as you're planning for the future. Bringing in, a person to bounce your goal ideas off of is really, really helpful. And if you're a person who's prone to be a perfectionist or to overcommit or to overextend yourself or think you can do more than you can, using goal like ranges might be something you choose. So you might pick a goal that's really, really lofty. Maybe that's the top of a range. Okay. And then you purposely sort of backtrack and give yourself a lower range for that goal as well, in case things don't go as you expect. You get sidelined, something happens that you can't perfectly achieve it. Then you have an acceptable range instead of this really, really high stretch goal. It just depends on how motivated you are by where you set your goals. Some people are very motivated by stretch goals and but they're not bothered if they can't meet them. Some people, if they set a stretch goal with a really high bar, if they can't meet them, then they want to give up. If that's you, if you're the latter case, you should definitely set a lower bar for your goals or give yourself ranges to work with. And this is all really setting yourself up psychologically to help you commit and follow through with your goals. So it's just knowing yourself and kind of working with what best motivates you.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about entrepreneurs being an ambitious bunch, because we certainly are. And Randy, we see this a lot. Business owners come in and they think they're going to hit the floor running and they're going to make $1 million their first year. How do we make sure that the goals we set financially are obtainable? Do you have any advice on that?
So back to what we started the program off with, is setting, quarterly or monthly goals and then following through. Your bank account comes once a month. You can balance it and you can see where you stand. If you do that soon, you'll know where you stand. If you wait till the end of the year, then you may be disappointed or give up, like Annie said. So I think that, like making those goals, even though the human nature is like, I want to plan for the whole year what I'm doing. It's like, what can you accomplish in the first quarter? And then, like what, or the first month here of the year. And then what was the result, and as you've experienced, Elizabeth, business never moves as fast as you'd like it to be. You're an overnight success that took 16 years to brew, so it's sometimes the ones that just hang in there and keep plugging away and are smart. They evaluate their situation on a like a monthly basis. They file their taxes early. They balance their checkbook. They do their bookkeeping. They talk to others, like Annie said, and so those are the ones that survive. They may not be the absolute best business or best business idea, but they're the ones that customers can rely on. So that's part of the equation, is you want to be able to rely on your supplier, even if they're not the best.
Yep. That's a great point, and it kind of transitions me to my next question again. Talking about we're setting goals, and then we evaluate after that month or that first quarter, and we realize something's not working. What are some solutions, and how important is it, how do you measure whether or not these goals are working?
Sure. So I'll just jump in, and then Randy, feel free to jump in, of course. With the SMART format that we were talking about before, the M is for measurable. So you want to make sure that you can measure your progress. So you want to pick a metric, KPI, a success metric, whatever you want to call it, that you can use to track your progress, and then also will indicate when you know you've achieved it. So we'll know we've achieved this goal when our success metric, which is, I don't know, a profitability, maybe it's a contribution margin, it's at X hurdle, X percentage. We'll know we've met our goal. So you want to make sure that you're attaching real measurable metrics to these goals so that you know that you're on track and when you've met it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be along the same lines as that when I go back to using volunteers, it's just take a risk, but don't take too big of a risk. You're not going to go find the smartest person, pay them the most money in a small business. What are your volunteers doing? Like if you're hiring an intern, what are your reasonable expectations for them? If you're going after a new customer base, what's reasonable to be able to obtain? And if it's not working, retrench, rework it, change your, and go to somebody like Annie and work on your marketing in a different way. If the market will tell you if you're doing well, so that would be what I'd add there, Elizabeth.
Thank you. How can we as small business owners use our competitors to help us set goals? Is that a good way to set goals, or should you avoid doing that? Any advice from either of you?
Yeah, I love doing that. I play basketball or sports. Competition is the best way to make your business better. And sometimes, honestly, I've just outlasted some of my competitors. So like they're better than me. It's just you just outlast them. So I think with competition, first of all, you want it to be healthy competition. Your competition may be your best resource, or you may decide they're just too strong and I'm going to go off in a different direction. So I love working with my competition because it helps my business be better, or I might be in the wrong business. I just might not be able to compete with them and what they're doing. So I love that. I'm sorry, Annie, I just wanted to jump in and answer that question.
I'm also competitive, Randy, so I understand. Well, it depends on, it probably depends. When in marketing, you're competing for market share, you're competing for, in your communications marketing, you're competing for share of eyeballs, you're competing for customers. So seeing what your competition is doing should always be on the weekly to-do list for your business. It's actually also very, very helpful sometimes because you can learn from what your competition is doing, particularly in marketing. So they're really testing strategies, aren't they, with their marketing that you can see. If their marketing is out there, if you can see it, they're testing something and you can see how it's going. And what they're doing well, you can build on that. What they're not doing well, you can avoid, right? You also need to make sure you're differentiated. Basic marketing principle there, right? So you need to make sure that you at all times understand how they're positioning themselves. You can partially figure that out by their advertising and their marketing materials, so that you can make sure that you're differentiated and that you're presenting a better product, a better solution, right? So you know how to talk about it. So so checking in with your competition should be something you always do. They can also help you define some goals too. Maybe not for the sake of competition, competition for competition's sake, but rather, what goals can help you meet your business objectives. Really, that needs to be what it's about. Something I didn't share earlier but Randy alluded to it is sustainability is kind of the word that I find myself using all the time, and particularly too in coaching people rather than businesses. Obviously, you want to make sure you're sustainable with your business, right? That means that you're pacing your growth. You're making sure that over the long run that you'll survive and you'll thrive. And it might not require double-digit growth, right? That might just be kind of slow and steady. It depends on, again, what type of business you have. But also as a person, you need to make sure that your growth is sustainable and that you don't burn yourself out by trying to to grow too quickly, and making sure you're pacing yourself so that because again, this is most goals, big goals are marathons, right? So you need to make sure, just like you would if you're running a marathon, that you're not going to burn yourself out in the first mile.
Oh, that's great. And one of my favorite ways to communicate this to my clients is the best way to look at your competitors is to figure out what they're doing and then do it better. And I use a tool called a competitor battle card, where you can kind of almost play a game with mapping out all your competitors' key successes and trying to figure out where you fit in with those. So definitely, I think there's a client on here actually that's done one of those with me. But you also brought up a good point, and it's how your business goals tie to your personal goals, right? And so, Annie, maybe you want to address that a little bit, since you work with both ends of the spectrum. And we're talking to entrepreneurs here, right? So they're business owners, but they're people too. They have private lives as well. So how do your business goals as an entrepreneur mesh with your private goals?
Sure. Gosh, when I'm dealing with entrepreneurs, particularly who have younger businesses, they're very, very involved in their business. Sometimes they're working like 7 days a week, and that oftentimes is required at the beginning, but it's not. Is it sustainable? For most folks, it isn't, right? So understanding, what you can manage and what your personal goals are for your business, what role, I guess, what your ideal engagement is with your business, that should be something that you're taking time to sort of vision out for yourself. And again, it might not be something you can achieve tomorrow, but it should be a goal that you're actively and consciously moving towards. If you have a hard time with that, if you're a person who thinks, yeah, I can work 7 days a week, 12-hour days for the next 50 years, no problem. Maybe you can, in which case you're probably a robot, and that's amazing. But if you're like me and you can't do that, then it might help for you to think about yourself as if you were an employee. So if you can try to put a little distance between you and you when you're goal setting, or think of if you're helping yourself plan your personal goals as related to your business, if you can think about it in terms of as if you're helping someone you care about do the same exercise, that can help you come down a little bit into the realm of realistic and ease off a little bit on yourself and recognize that, your health, your wellness matters, your personal life matters, right? All of this matters, and it creates a long and sustainable career for you as an entrepreneur or whatever role you're in. So, I would challenge people to think of it that way. And you may want, this is something I always do with new clients who are there for career coaching or life coaching or leadership coaching, is we'll start with visioning. What do you want for yourself? If anything were possible. Some people are afraid to even go there. They think, oh, it's not possible, so I'm not going to do that exercise. But oftentimes what people find is when they do give themselves permission to sort of put the vision on paper, they'll discover paths and ways to make parts of that vision reality in ways that they discounted before, because they wouldn't give themselves permission to do that. Here's where getting help, I think, is important. If you sit down with an SBDC consultant, you're going to talk ultimately about staffing, right? And you're going to talk about how to manage growth with managing, staffing, and hopefully your consultant's going to question your plan to work 7 days a week, for the next 50 years, right? They're going to be like, well, let's actually walk through what it might look like for you to, hire more staff eventually and have you kind of fit yourself more into a CEO role where you're not, doing all the jobs all the time. So I would say just get help if you struggle with balance, and don't be afraid to ask yourself what you really want, and for that exercise, just imagine that if all things were possible, what would it look like?
Yeah. I think that's great advice, Annie, specifically for those business owners. If you're just getting started or you're at that point where you're feeling burnt out, there definitely needs to be a mesh between the personal and the business goals, and making sure that you're scoping out some time for the personal space. Randy, I know that mixing personal and business is bad. We all know that. I think hopefully if you're online, you know that. But from an accountant's perspective, how can you set goals that separate personal and professional, but also blend it together? Do you have any tips?
I think a lot of what Annie said, is just like we're setting business goals or talking about setting business goals. You have to get your family to buy into that. Like how is this going to work within your family? And Annie mentioned about that treat yourself like an employee. What is a 40 or 50-hour work week going to look like? So I wholeheartedly endorse what she said about a balance between business and personal. Now, as an accountant, you're always trying to figure out how you can take a business deduction for something that's personal, So, so there's certainly the blending of it is not always a bad thing. As you work with the SBDC, they'll also talk to you about a separate legal entity and even treating your business like it's a separate thing, So, so an LLC or something like that, kind of separates things, even though you may be annually on your taxes putting your business and your family all together, but these are the tools that you can use to kind of keep things separate. The one thing I always talk about right from the beginning, though, is it's easy to go get a separate free checkbook, and I've mentioned it all through the presentation. Is a business doesn't survive unless there's more money coming in than goes out. Even if it's loan money, you have to figure out how to get from point A to point B. And running out of money and finances can be a big stress, both business wise and personal wise. So you just don't want to have that extra stress. Your competitors don't have that stress, so you don't want to have that stress. So I think that's another thing that's really important.
Thank you, Randy. Well, I just want to remind the audience, if you do have any questions, now the time to be putting those into the chat or the comments, wherever you're joining us from. We'll get those and we'll be able to address those. I'm going to start to finish up the talk as we check in and keep an eye out for questions. So Annie, I'm going to ask you if there was a key takeaway from today, the number one takeaway for business owners to walk away with on goal setting for 2022, in your opinion, what would that be?
Sure. For me, I am going to go arm in arm with Randy here and say, empower yourself when you're setting goals for your business. Empower yourself with greater familiarity with financials. If that's not your strength, your strong suit, I think the folks working this webinar posted a link. There are many events like this, but there's one that's coming up that I'm involved with through Ben Franklin. And that's designed to get, entrepreneurs and small business more familiar with financial statements and ratios, because a lot of your businesses will either be kind of couched in the financials themselves or linked to them, or some of your, your tracking metrics, maybe in those financials. The question about when to expand, a lot of that, your financials are things you should look at to answer questions like that, to make decisions for your business. And this is not a replacement. Getting familiar with financials is not a replacement for an accountant. In fact, it can make your meetings with your accountant more productive. It can help you do financial analysis, which is on top of managing your accounts. So I just want to kind of put in a plug for that. And then planning. So getting help with planning for goals. Don't go alone. Don't go it alone, especially if it's the first time you're doing goal setting. I never do goal setting alone, and I've done it for a long time, so I always, bring in some kind of accountability partner for the actual goal identification. And then I definitely bring in an accountability partner for the goal activation, where I'm chipping away towards achieving those goals.
Yeah, great tips, Annie. How about you, Randy? A key takeaway from today for business owners on goal setting?
Yeah, I just think they're necessary. It's just really important to set goals for your business, not just in January, but like we talked about, quarterly. And from Annie's takeaway there is, make sure you don't go it alone. Get some help in those areas that you're not strong in, or just get some help from the volunteers in your environment that say, hey, I'm here to help make your business successful, because you just can't go it alone. That's what families, employees, and others are there for, is to make this work if it's something that really should work.
Absolutely. Thank you both. I think we have dropped the link to your upcoming webinar at Ben Franklin, Annie, and we have some webinars I'll be sharing as well in just a moment. And just to let everybody know that you can work with SBDC advisors, no cost. We can kind of be that sounding board for you as well. But sometimes resources within your own company involving employees and goal setting, there's lots of different options, and we're happy to explore different avenues for setting goals with you if you're interested. So the next question I have for my two experts is, what books are you reading? Do you have any books that you're currently reading, either tied to goal setting or just that you wanted to share? Annie, I'll have you kick us off. Do you have a book recommendation for our audience today?
Well, the word was mentioned earlier, and so that just immediately came to mind, the B word, burnout. And so for my really my roadrunner type of clients who are just super eager and prone to overextending themselves, sustainability is the word I say like 5 times a day to them. And managing and preventing and treating burnout when it happens is important. So there is a book that I read recently called Burnout. I think it's Nagoski is the author, and it was honestly probably primarily written for females because it really gave a female perspective of burnout today. But it talked about the physical causes of it, and I guess want to throw it out there as a caution. If you are a person who puts out a lot of energy towards your goals, and if you push yourself really hard, if you get burnt out, if you don't manage yourself, and if you get burnt out, you are actually somewhat handicapped for a while, mentally and energy wise, until you recover from it. It's a physical state, and it's bad, right? And it's really painful for people who are ambitious, because then it's like getting knee surgery. Then you have to sit down, right? For somebody who loves to be active, to sit down and heal, and it just about kills you to be inactive for weeks and weeks while you heal. It's similar to that. So make sure that you are pacing yourself and you're managing your energy expenditure so that you don't get burnt out. So the book, as I mentioned, is called Burnout. But in terms of books around goal setting, again, there's lots and lots of articles, excellent blogs and articles written for business, written for people around goal setting, written the SMART goals. I would definitely encourage people to read about those. But yeah, that one came to mind.
Okay, well, you've successfully scared me, and I don't want to read that book. I probably should be the person reading it. But thank you for the book recommendation, Annie. Randy, how about you? Do you have a book recommendation?
Yeah, sure. So Crushing It is by Gary Vaynerchuk. I've just been reading his book because he's really involved in the Bitcoin or the NFT space. He uses more like influencers and famous people. So it's all completely opposite from me. So I'm just trying to, learn what somebody else is doing in another space. And if you Google as far as for goal setting, if you Google a SWOT analysis, it'll come up with a nice little chart, and it's a very simple way for you to look at your business without having to read a whole book, and when you go into the SBDC, they'll be impressed that you know what SWOT is, So that would be my two reading goals for your audience.
Great. Thank you, Randy. All right. I have one last question for the panel, but I do have a question that came in the chat, and it says, is there an SBDC accountant we can have access to? My LLC is a ministry, and I have questions. So we don't have an on-staff accountant with the SBDC. And in fact, we don't like to get too deep into that because we aren't accountants. We would probably refer you to someone like Randy, and we'll make sure you have contact information for his website. But you can also work with the SBDC consultant. It's good just to get together with a consultant. You can meet with us once a year or once a week, however often you'd like. But just getting on the radar and being having access to those resources, as well as referrals to people like Randy and other resources that you may need. So we'll make sure you get that information in the chat to make those contacts. So my last question here is about productivity. So we all know that setting good habits and being productive in our day is important. How about you all, both of you? Do you have any productivity hacks or ways to make life more simple that you could give to our audience today to finish us up on this webinar? Annie?
Sure. So the first one is kind of like a know thyself. So on a personal level, if you can observe the times when you've been most productive and what the conditions were. So both internal and external. So what was around you, who was around you, what time of day, where were you, what were you doing, types of tasks, etc. And then internally, how did you feel? And learning from your past experience, bringing that into planning for productivity is an important thing to do. And as much as you can, then organizing your life around your particular needs for productivity. So just as an example, some folks are really great, really productive at certain times of the day, and really not at other times. And as much as you can, kind of organizing your work around those times. Some people are highly productive in spurts, and this is me, by the way. I'll have a few days where I am just like a fire hydrant, right? Everything, I'm just doing everything. I'm like a ninja. And then the next few days, I'm low productivity. I go in waves like that. I'm not constant every day. And as much as I can, understanding that I can't always get my way, but as much as I can, I try to organize my work around those particular needs I have as an individual. So that's one thing I would say. And the other is for hard jobs and jobs that you have to kind of push through especially when you don't want to, using project management tools, using timelines, I have little frameworks I use for myself. I keep them right on my desk. And it's not just a do list of tasks with subtasks. It also involves who's involved, time frame, success metrics maybe. I'm a fan of Gantt charts. I'm guilty. So looking at interdependencies between tasks. So spending some time in the project management phase before I dig in actually saves me a ton of time. And it makes me feel more empowered, more on top of things, right? I just find that I work smarter too when I manage my projects better. So there's lots of project management tools out there that are accessible for free. So I encourage people to look into those.
Thank you, Annie. And I feel like a project management workshop for our small business owners is going to be in the horizon. That's definitely something that we should work on. I also want to mention the book Flow. I don't know if you've read Flow before, but what you were talking about is that whole concept of being in flow, where you identify those moments where you can work really efficiently and just continually to try to create an environment so that you can have that. So great tips, Annie. Randy, what about you? Do you have any productivity or life hacks or how you simplify your workday tips for our audience?
Yes, I'd probably just go back to one of my partners once told me, don't chase shiny objects, so it's probably a negative is that, and it's really helped me though, because I think I'm kind of one of those people, it's like, oh, the newest flavor of the day is what I want to go chase instead of taking care of today's business. So not, especially with entrepreneurs or business owners, you really want to be thoughtful before you go after chasing those opportunities. There's always going to be another opportunity tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So it's, before you go and chase that shiny object, really reassess whether it's something you should be doing, or if really what you should be doing is right in front of you with your family and your business and your customers.
Thank you, Randy. And, saying don't chase shiny objects is such a good tip because, Randy, you've explored so many different spaces. You do a lot of different things, not just a CPA. I know you have different interests in businesses that you're involved in. So it doesn't mean that you can't be innovative and chase these great ideas. It's just making sure you're choosing the right one. So thank you, Randy, for sharing that. I want to thank you both for joining us today. It's been a really fun talk, something that I know that we're all kind of top of mind this time of year, and I really appreciate your insight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just talk about a few different programs coming up with the Penn State SBDC. I'm reminding you that there's Annie's program there as well, the financial program with Ben Franklin. And this is just a little bit of what we have going on at the SBDC coming up, but we're running a business plan boot camp. So even if you're an existing business and you never wrote that business plan, we have a tool called Live Plan, which is actually an online business planning tool program that we're going to give access to for free for business owners that are accepted to the program. So if you're interested in going through this boot camp, not only will you write your business plan, but at the end of the plan, you'll have a chance to win up to $500 in a business plan pitch contest at the very end of the program. So applications close on January 14th. If you're interested in that, please contact us and get signed up for that. Also, we have QuickBooks. We talked a lot about getting your finances in order. Our QuickBooks online training starts on Monday. So if you're interested in starting to learn QuickBooks, or even if you've been using QuickBooks and you want a refresher, this is a no-cost program. So you can sign up and get involved in our program starting Monday. It's 3 consecutive Mondays from 9 to 12. So you can get signed up with that. And also, if you're joining us here, you're probably following us on social media platform of some sort. You can find all our information about our programs, and we share information about resources in the community, as well as different programs throughout the state. So if you're not following us, be sure to click on some of those links and follow us, and get reminded of what's coming up. So finally, if you're interested in one-on-one consulting, or just finding some more information about our events, here's our contact information. Again, we offer that no-cost confidential consulting to small businesses, and we'd be happy to work with you. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Have a nice day.